Is the beautiful community there? If the beautiful community is there, we can start and say a few things about Putin's tragi-comic visit to North Korea, which included him placing a kitsch Stalinist article in North Korea's propaganda outlet, from which unfortunately I'll have to read you a couple of sentences because I've just had the misfortune of reading this piece. I think I have something more interesting symbolic to say, but let me say something that is almost no more than nothing, but it's a tiny bit about the practicalities of it. Now, you all know the basics. The North Koreans are giving ammo to the Russians, and they're getting food and fuel from the Russians. They want more access to missile and space technology. They signed this allyship deal now. They didn't reveal what they signed in detail because that is part of the intimidatory effect of what they are up to. We are concerned about what the Russians give or reveal to North Korea, and we are concerned about consequent North Korean provocative and escalatory behavior in the region. We also know that whatever happens between the Russians and North Koreans should be minimally tolerable, if not preferable, for the Chinese. So China is a certain kind of check on this. But the only meaningful takeaway practically that I want to share is really this. It is true that Russia is very scant on true allies. And so to that extent, you're allowed to laugh a bit about Russia's bond with North Korea. But don't laugh too long, because while Russia has fewer true friends, it has many friends in certain respects. And we're entering a world increasingly, and we discussed this on the breakdown of the world order video on the main channel a few months ago, a world where citizens have this difficult time of working out where their country stands because their country presents a cacophony of policies and stances. That we're enemies of this state in 70 respects out of 100, but we're friendly with it in these 30 respects. So what is a citizen meant to think? And then the quality of communication the citizen gets about all of this is minimal too. But we are living in a world of enemies in certain respects, friends in certain respects, and a global wash of interconnected conflict in which the respect in which different countries are friends and enemies are differently inflected in different hotspots in the world. So we've got India guzzling Russian oil, we've got the European Union in 2023 breaking its Russian grain import, which was at record high in 2023. So we've got this kind of complexity, which if you shake it all out, means that Russia is nowhere near sufficiently isolated to make that level of isolation commensurate with imminence of defeat in the Russo-Ukrainian war. Russia is far from the commensurate isolation for that kind of outcome. Of course, the West can do more than it's done, but that's where we are at the moment. So that's the practical observation. But the symbolic thing I wanted to say really is that this stinks of Russia's future politicizing and totalitarian turn. Now, of course, Putin visited North Korea in 2000 when he was more ironic and giggly than he was this time about this Riefenstahlian display. And we've got to be serious about this. I mean, North Korea is a paradigm of illegitimacy. When we talk about radical political illegitimacy, we're really talking about a situation where you describe what's up politically in a country, and what you are describing is best approximated by the tag, the state's the enemy, the people. And so there are questions about where these people who were assembled along the road for Putin's motorcade procession into mosaics and holding up placards, where did these people come from? Where did they get bussed in from? Did they sleep on the street for a day, for 2 days, while being forced to rehearse this? As soon as you begin to reflect on this sort of display, you begin to feel how extraordinarily sick and humanly catastrophic it is. And Putin took to it much more like a fish to water this time than he did in 2000. And that's a kind of revelation of how much more toxic that kind of power makes you over time, no matter how toxic you were when you came in. Now, I promised to torture you with some Putin quotes. So here we go. Pyongyang remains our staunch, like-minded supporter, ready to resolutely resist the desire of the collective West to prevent the formation of a multipolar world order based on justice, mutual respect for sovereignty, and consideration of each other's interests. An anti-colonial story. It's appalling to generalize the global South into the tag, the global South. So that is unconstructive, but it is true that the anti-colonial message in much of the world, the anti-colonial message of the Putin regime, is succeeding. And on the one hand, we have a lot to answer for about the degree of inequality and resentment that is present in our world. At the same time, we also do have a right to tell countries that feel no sympathy for Ukraine, who've had their own anti-colonial, post-colonial journeys, to wake the hell up and stop BSing. So it's both. Now, let's read more. Russia has always supported and will continue to support the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and the heroic people in their struggle against you and me, which is a cunning, dangerous, and aggressive enemy. And here is the most humiliating line. It is gratifying that our Korean friends, despite many years of economic pressure, provocations, blackmail, and military threats from the United States, are as effective as us in defending their interests. I mean, here is a guy who has organized a bunch of massacres in a neighboring country while driving his own society into a civilizational wall that is going to hit, and a political wall that it is going to hit in 5, 10, 20 years. And that's him working on interests. So symbolism, key point. Let's get back to it. I have never seen Russian propaganda as Soviet as in some of its reporting of this visit by Putin. So really stuff like North Korea is the freest country in the world. That is alternate reality propaganda. Back to a few days ago in the main channel video. Perhaps I exaggerate when I say that the Russians are now being pumped with a degree of 20-30% of alternate reality propaganda, and still 70% of that post-truth, don't believe anybody and don't believe us, volume flooding of the information environment with multifaceted, conflictive messages so that you epistemically give up and politically give up. But we are seeing some growth in Soviet-style propaganda in the sense of its form being alternate reality propaganda. We're going to tell you a story, and we actually want you to believe in it. We actually want you to recite it at least. Comply with it. Of course, the content, as we recently discussed, isn't Soviet regime was a weird sort of hard left enterprise. This is an extreme hard right enterprise. They're very different regimes, which is why accounts that try to overstate the continuity between Soviet and Russian imperialism sometimes run aground, because it's imperialism, but there are some different textures there that really matter in terms of, for instance, the kind of threat that is being posed to the world, the nature of the threat, the values and images behind the threat, and so on. But this Soviet alternate reality type propaganda is something the Russians are going to receive more of. Whatever the bit of the pie chart they get now, it'll expand. And all this symbolizes Russia's future politicization, totalitarian progression. It'll never become North Korea, but we are going to experience, observe Russia taking more totalitarian turns, the political regime engaging in more attempts at politicization of society than anything we have seen so far in the first 2.5 years of the war. And the stink of Putin's North Korea visit is a good symbol for this really inevitable future to come. Lots of love. Talk very soon.